Hey y'all, what is up? Keasbey here. So today we're going to be looking at some Floowandereeze replays. A little bit ago, I posted up what I, at the time, intended to be a work in progress deck list as I felt I could still make improvements to it, but I wanted to share at least a starting point for something I thought could still be viable. Well, after a lot of testing, I've ultimately circled back to the exact same list, and we're gonna show it in action today. So, this is going to be part 1 of 2 of replay videos in the interest of not producing a 40-minute long replay video. We will be touching on the Kashtira matchup, but that's going to be in part 2 since I do actually have a bit more to say about that generically. And lastly, you are going to be seeing a lot of board breakers in action here. Well, we play quite a few of them, so pretty solid odds of opening them, and that's kind of the point of the deck. Go second, break a board, establish control. So the last thing I do want to say before going into the replays, I do think compared to other going second decks, Floowandereeze is uniquely positioned, especially right now where it's not as commonly played, to really take advantage of either a broken board or a super simplified game state. Yes, a lot of generic tools out there do counter Floowandereeze. Ash, Imperm, Lancia's kind of back in fashion because of Kashtira. But Floowandereeze also plays in such a unique way that I do think it is especially good at leveraging these go second staples, more so than a lot of other decks out there that do lose to some other interruptions that Floowandereeze can play through just by virtue of the way Floowandereeze functions. Anyway, without further ado, don't forget to drop this video a like, subscribe to the channel for even more, and let's go ahead and look at some Floowandereeze gameplay. Okay, so the first match that we're going to be looking at is versus Labyrinth. So our opponent has gone ahead and set 3 and passed, Compulse, Boo Boo Game, and Welcome Labyrinth. We have opened Evenly Matched, but Evenly Matched is actually not great against Labyrinth, and we're about to see why. They can really play through an Evenly Matched pretty well. But we're going to fire it off anyway, because sometimes Evenly Matched just works as an MST, and that's totally fine. Again, we just want to clear as much interaction as possible, so even if we don't get the most out of that evenly, still worth doing. Anyway, now we're pretty much unimpeded to be able to go off. So they are going to get to fire off a ton of Labyrinth effects because that's just how the deck works. You activate a trap, you get to do a bunch of stuff. So we are going to play as though we're playing under Ash, despite the fact that our opponent does not have a hand. Just good to be in the habit of doing that. We're also going to get this guy out of the graveyard so that if this game does go on for a long time, it can't recur itself over and over again. So we are going to slightly misclick here. We know that this is big Welcome Labyrinth. We saw it get set this turn. This back row is unknown. We are going to accidentally tribute off or send off via Unexplored Winds the wrong back row. Meant to send the unknown one, but it's going to work out totally fine regardless. So the M-Pen is going to get bounced back to our hand, but that is 100% fine because neither M-Pen nor Unexplored Winds are once per turn. We're going to get rid of that Boo Boo Game, trigger M-Pen again, grab another copy of Map, and then we're going to send off the Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle to summon Apex Avion, at which point with no graveyard interaction, nothing on field, and dealing with an onboard negate, knowing that we have Dreaming Town in hand, our opponent is going to surrender. Let's look at the absolute mess that I play in game 2. Okay, so game 2, we have opened up an absolutely incredible hand for this matchup. Feather Duster, Cosmic Cyclone, D-Shifter is actually pretty solid on this because it prevents the Labyrinth traps from going to the graveyard. Let's see what happens. This is a very big lesson in read your opponent's cards. And we're going to rip Danko Sekka off the top, the silver bullet for this matchup. So we're going to normal summon the Danko Sekka here. Unless your opponent has a Solemn Judgment, they cannot respond to Danko Sekka in any way. Solemn Judgment or anything that would negate the summon itself. So you can't Imperma Danko, you can't Bottomless Trap Holo Danko, you can't Compulse Danko, nothing like that. So this is where we are going to make a huge mistake. We honestly should have just fired off Feather Duster here, since everything is going to get banished instead of going to the graveyard. If we weren't under Dimension Shifter, I would say that there is a very strong argument to just leave Danka and force these to stay set on the field. Again, we know that some of the Labyrinth traps do have in-graveyard effects. I do believe a lot of them, a trap has to be triggered or go off in order for that to happen, but I'm not super familiar with all of them. And the other thing is too, we want to leave these forced onto the field so that our opponent can't imperm from hand, they can't evenly match from hand, things like that. So we really could have gotten away with Feather Dust during this situation, but we didn't do that. This is going to become an issue because I completely forgot to reread Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castles and did not realize that she cannot be targeted as long as there's a set card on the field. So we're going to fire off map and we're going to try to get really cute with Rise of the Mega Monarch. And it's not going to work. So we're going to summon Stree, get that D-Shifter out of here, and go into Ryza. And at this point, we realize we cannot target this, and we are just going to completely fumble the rest of the game. And yeah, we just end here and immediately surrender. Especially after that. So yeah, read your opponent's cards. We could have very easily won that game if we had just gone ahead and went to M-Pen, cleared the big Lady Labyrinth, and just made them normal summon to play. So let's look at game 3 and see if we can redeem ourselves. So after that game 2, we really do have a lot to make up for, but I really just wanted to show that just to really make the point of read your opponent's cards. Okay, so our opponent's going to fire off Welcome Labyrinth. We are going to attempt to imperm. They are going to compulse her back to the hand, and that is going to allow them to summon Lady Labyrinth and continue on. We're going to fire off Duality. They're actually going to Solemn Judgment the Duality. I'm not entirely sure why they did that. We're going to fire off Evenly Matched. Again, perfectly fine with using Evenly Matched as a compulsory evacuation device. They're going to fire off Destructive Dharma Cannon, which is going to flip Lady Labyrinth face down. So we are now free to go off, and we are going to redeem ourselves on that Rise of Play. We're also going to go ahead and make the assumption that our opponent does not have Ash Blossom because they Solemn Judgmented the pot of Duality, so pretty solid to assume that if they had Ash, they would have used it. We're going to grab the Ryza. With the Rubina, we're going to go ahead and grab a copy of Stree. We're going to summon the Stree, just get that Welcome Labyrinth out of there before we go any further, and we are going to summon Ryza, spin the big lady back to the hand, and go off from there. So we are playing it this way because we opened the Dreaming Town. If we hadn't, we would have definitely gone into M-Pen to get access to the Dreaming Town. But now on the next turn, we can go into M-Pen, summon the Ryza, and just be able to completely lock out the game from there. We do know that they have the Ariana in hand, but that's not going to be an issue. We also know that they're drawing Lady Labyrinth off the top. Evenly Matched was a very good thing for them to have. So off the Evenly Matched, we are going to go ahead and get rid of map, and we are going to banish the Rubina. But remember, because Rubina's effect, she will banish herself face up, superseding Evenly Matched. We're definitely keeping the Dreaming Town because that will give us interaction regardless of if our opponent normal summons or not. So our opponent is going to normal summon. And set 1, passing it back to us, we're just going to go ahead and end out their turn by going through our full Floowandereeze combo. So we know what this is, and we know what this is already, so we have no interruption whatsoever to worry about. Gonna go ahead and get the M-Pen, and we're just going to go ahead and flip that face down. Honestly, the only reason we're doing this is so that we have a really good recovery target with Toucan. And we're really, at this point, not worried about anything. We have complete control over this game. We're going to bounce back the back row because, again, we know Lady Labyrinth in hand, Ariana face down, they have no interaction, and we are going to keep it that way. They're going to go ahead and summon the Lady Labyrinth and pass turn to us. And from here, we are just going to fire off map, and our opponent is going to promptly surrender. Alright, so that was a game versus Labyrinth. Let's have a look at another back row matchup in Trap Trick. Alright, so pretty solid hand for going against Trap Trick. Unlike Labyrinth, who can chain a ton of their traps to get around evenly matched, Trap Trick cannot. We're also going to fire off Dimension Shifter here before they start link summoning to make sure that they have an empty graveyard for later on. A risk you always take firing off Dimension Shifter in response to a situation in main phase is you do open up the door for a triple attack or a Talon's Thrust. But again, I would rather take that chance and get more out of my Dimension Shifter than just fire it off in the standby or draw phase and giving our opponent ample time to play around it. So they're going to go ahead and draw 2. They're going to go into a Sarah. Also, for this matchup specifically, D-Shifter does greatly limit the use of Garden. Since they don't have a graveyard to summon from, it would have to come from hand. And because when we did fire off the D-Shifter, Murmello, already banished, can't be summoned with Garden, so they're kind of stuck here. They're going to set 3 and pass back to us. And we're just going to go straight to the battle phase, fire off evenly matched. So, something really unique right now about the metagame is firing off Dimension Shifter and then an evenly matched doesn't really tell you that you're playing Floowandereeze. We could be on Kashtira, we could be on Exosister. There's just a lot of other decks right now that could potentially be playing Dimension Shifter, which is also why I want to evenly match now before I go into Pot of Prosperity, because our opponent might try to set up to play against Kashtira and then get hit with Floowandereeze plays, as has happened to me before after an evenly matched ND Shifter. So they're going to use the Sarah because we did give them a normal trap to go into, I can't pronounce that properly, so I'm not even going to try. But it's not going to do anything right now. So we're going to fire off the Prosperity. And unfortunately, we don't find anything to start our combos. But fortunately, we did open Dreaming Town, so we can 100% make this work. We're going to normal summon the Toucan and hold on to that Eagle to play on our opponent's turn. So our opponent is going to attempt to go to the battle phase, and unfortunately we can't let them do that because we need this Toucan, so we got to play a little bit early than usually I would like to. Our Dreaming Town, unfortunately, is going to trigger the Sarah, giving them a special summon. Fortunately for us, though, that special summon is going to go ahead and get flipped face down and not be usable for anything for them. They're going to flip that face up. They're going to go into another Link monster, whose effects are going to be cut off due to M-Pen. Unfortunately, the continuous effect that if they use a whole trap, it will get reset instead of going to the graveyard is still live, but not really relevant. So we're going to go ahead and fire off map. We're going to go through some standard Floowandereeze plays. We're going to banish out the M-Pen because we can easily recover it with Rabina, and we're going to use this Eagle and Search to grab an Apex Avian instead. We don't even need the Rabina. We already had the Toucan banished. I completely forgot. So with this M-Pen, we are going to go ahead and grab Unexplored Winds. Our opponent is going to Floodgate Trap Hold the M-Pen. That is totally fine. Also, if they Bottomless Trap Hold it too, that would be pretty fine as well. Either of those don't really do a lot against any of our plays. We're going to normal summon the Rabina, go ahead and grab a Stree, and we're going to fire off Unexplored Winds. And we'll just send that face down M-Pen and the one back row that we were unaware of, which was the Bottomless Trap Hole, which would have been terrible to have the Apex Avian get hit with, and go to the battle phase. So we're going to clear their field, poke over for an extra 6, and we're just going to mulligan back that Eaglin for an Eaglin. I hate when that happens. So our opponent's going to fire a Feather Duster. We're just going to fire off Apex Avian to negate it, because at this point they really would have to normal summon to do anything, and we do know this is Floodgate Trap Hole. So our opponent's going to set 1 and pass. We're just going to go ahead and immediately clear that by summoning Apex Avian, aided by Unexplored Winds, and at that point our opponent will go ahead and surrender. Let's take a look at Game 2. Alright, so we are once again going second, and we have opened pretty well. Unfortunately, this hand does lose to an Ash Blossom, but fortunately our opponent does not have it. We're going to go ahead and fire off the Dimension Shifter again, making a lot of their plays a lot more expensive. Something that a lot of players don't seem to be aware of, but it's really, really good to know in this matchup. Rafflesia sends to grave for cost, so under Dimension Shifter, she actually cannot even activate. And again, the Bottomless Trap Hole and the Floodgate Trap Hole are more or less non-issues for us. We're going to go ahead and go straight to the battle phase, fire off the evenly matched once again, and now we are free to go off. We can more or less assume that our opponent does not have Ash Blossom at this point, as a post-battle phase banish 6 Pot of Prosperity would probably be a pretty nice target for it. So we're going to banish that Shifter out of here, and we're going to grab the Rabina. So at this point, we're not super worried about Ash Blossom, because if they Ash the Rabina, we can go ahead and Advent it out and use our Game Mechanic Normal Summon on an Eaglin that we would have grabbed with the Advent and continue off from there. But fortunately for us, that did not happen. We're going to go into the Eaglin. We are going to use that to grab a copy of M-Pen. And with that M-Pen, we are going to grab Dreaming Town. We are going to go into Ryza, spin that back to the top of the deck, and put Ryza back in our hand. Activate that, grab the Toucan. The Toucan is going to allow us to grab back the M-Pen we banished, or the M-Pen that got banished, sorry. And with that M-Pen, we are going to grab Unexplored Winds, completing this board, which was perfect for taking out Trap Trick. Our opponent's going to normal summon Mantis, which will trigger our map. We're going to grab the Toucan, and at this point, our opponent will go ahead and surrender. So yeah, evenly matched is remarkably strong against Trap Trick, as is Unexplored Winds. Alright, so we are jumping right into Game 2 versus Branded. So, unfortunately, our opponent's going to standby phase, fire up this Lancia. We are going to chain Advent of Adventure, banishing this Toucan to grab ourselves a copy of Verbena. Unfortunately, because Pot of Prosperity banishes for cost, we are now going to be unable to use it, but fortunately, we have a duality. So with that duality, we are going to actually go ahead and grab that Eaglin. So we're going to normal summon Verbena, and with Verbena, we're actually going to grab a second copy of Verbena. The reason that we're doing this is because everything that we tribute off this turn is going to go to the graveyard, so it won't be recoverable later on. I want to have this Verbena in my hand so that I have a full restart to the combo on my opponent's turn if we get to M-Pen and get a copy of Dreaming Town. We do have the Toucan banished as well, but that's not going to help us if these two are in the graveyard and we don't have another Verbena to start our combo. So anyway, always remember, Verbena can go ahead and search another copy of Verbena. And now we'll go into Eaglin. Fortunately, our opponent does not have any further interaction beyond the Lancia, and we will go into the M-Pen from here. And we'll grab that Dreaming Town. We're also going to set the Prosperity just as bait in case our opponent is on a Cosmic Cyclone. So now, despite the fact that these two ended up in the graveyard, we do still have full combo via Verbena. So our opponent's going to pull Book of Eclipse off the top. They're going to fire off Branded Fusion, go into Lubellion, and we at this point are going to go ahead and fire off Dreaming Town. And we will get hit with the Dragostapelia here, unfortunately. Our opponent's going to normal summon the Aluber, grab a Branded in red, and do a whole lot. They're going to make the Guardian Chimera, and that's going to take out the rest of our board and give them a search. So they do have to put the Chimera in defense mode, because if they put it in attack, it would not have triggered due to the M-Pen. Alright, so our opponent's got Book of Eclipse and Branded Expulsion set face down, and a Dragostapelia live on the field. So we're going to go to the battle phase, immediately get over the Dragostapelia, and let's play a bit in main phase 2. So we're going to fire off Terraforming. I still love playing Terraforming for this exact reason. Give me 4 copies of map, absolutely please. So with this Eaglin, we are going to go ahead and grab another copy of M-Pen. We're going to go into that M-Pen, grab the Toucan back, and we are going to go ahead and fire off Dreaming Town to make it recoverable with Toucan. Speaking of which, we're going to recover it with Toucan, and now we are going to tribute both of those out for a Rise of the Mega Monarch, and let's get rid of some back row and bounce the Rise back to our hand, and we are going to now go into our opponent's turn with Dreaming Town and Unexplored Winds live. Our opponent's going to fire off Branded Expulsion, and they are going to make a Lubellion via Aluber on our turn, and now they have Mirror Jade, which is going to clear our M-Pen and then give them a search in the end phase. Well played, opponent, well played. Fortunately, we can beat this. So our opponent's going to normal summon, triggering our map. We're going to get Verbena, and then we're just going to go ahead and go through all the motions. Let's go ahead and go into Apex Avion, and now from here we are going to continue on. So remember, because our opponent used this at the end of our turn, they can't use it during this turn. And that was why we summoned Apex Avion. We're going to go ahead and flip that Mirror Jade face down. And we're going to get it out of here. So, because of the way we did this, we are not going to stop the effect that's going to nuke our field with Apex Avion. But we're using Apex Avion to force them to not do anything major for the rest of this turn, so that they have the incentive to leave it on field. So basically, we used Apex Avion as a very large piece of bait for that. We do know about the Branded in red, but the way anything would work out, if they summoned it on Chainlink 2, it would never get to trigger, because we could immediately send it off with Unexplored Winds before it has a chance to trigger on its own chain, whatever fusion monster they want to go into. So Branded in red is really not a threat at this point. And they actually didn't even activate it, so we'll just spin Ryza back into the deck. And now we are free to absolutely continue to go off however we please. And at this point, our opponent will go ahead and surrender. Let's go into game 3. Alright, so we are going second. We've drawn Dimension Shifter, which I still think is remarkably strong in this matchup. It cuts off a lot of their follow-up plays. Unfortunately, we were a little slow in firing it off. We were trying to wait for a good point to do it, and we found it. So unfortunately for us though, a lot of their effects do trigger when they're banished, but again, we're stopping a lot of recovery, and it does turn off something like Branded in Red, so that is always worth doing. Preventing our opponent from making Guardian Chimera on our turn is very strong, so our opponents ended on a remarkably good board. Fortunately, we've got 9 cards to find an out to it. And there is a solid one. There are 2 solid ones, actually. So, you might be wondering why we grabbed Infinite Impermanence over Evenly Matched. Well, if we whiff off this Pot of Duality, and our opponent saves the Dragostapelia, that Evenly Matched is not going to be worth very much because we just can't play through this. However, if we Imperm the Dragostapelia, we can play through a ton of damage, adventing out our M-Pen out and getting us to a starting point via map. So just playing it a little bit safe in case we whiff off the Duality. But we're going to fire off the Duality here. And what do you know, there's our answer. But we're not going to grab it. We're actually going to play much more aggressively and take a lot more damage, but potentially do a lot of damage on our end and just much stronger end board for us by doing this. So we're going to Imperm the Dragostapelia, and we are just going to keep hemorrhaging life points because they are not going to matter when we end on our board. Plus, we get a little bit back with Advent, so that's nice. So when you are playing into a Masquerade, it is really important before you start your combos that you do all the necessary math. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and grab Unexplored Winds at this point, and we're just going to go to the battle phase. Probably stop taking damage at this point, fire off Unexplored Winds, summon the Rabina, get the Toucan, and we are going to go ahead and get that Dragostapelia off the field and nice and banished where we want it to be, and go into our opponent's turn with a remarkably powerful board. See now, because that D-Shifter, the Branded in our head, was offline until they fired this off, but again, just singing the praises of Dimension Shifter. So I'm not entirely sure why they didn't snipe anything out with Aqua Dolphin. They could have hit the Toucan, or I think they could have just hit the Toucan, unless I'm completely misunderstanding how Aqua Dolphin works. But regardless, we would have been fine if they did. So at this point now, we are going to go ahead and fire off Dreaming Town and play a bit on our opponent's turn. So the Quintus is going to go off, reducing all of our attacks, but that's not overly relevant at this point. And now this is really important because the way this chain works out is so perfectly for us. Our opponent fires off the Branded in Red as part of this chain. Not what they should have done, because this is going to resolve as Chain Link 3. Whatever is going to hit the field is going to be subject to being flipped face down on Chain Link 2. So if it has any sort of on summon trigger effect, it will not go off, because by the time this chain resolves, it will now be face down. So worked out really well for us. Regardless, though, we did have Apex Avian on the field for anything. And at this point, our opponent will go ahead and surrender. Alright, so I know what you're all thinking. Wow, what does this deck do if it doesn't draw Board Breaker? Well, let's look at a final matchup against Sword Soul and find out. So I actually really like Dimension Shifter in this matchup. It turns off the Tenyi portion of the deck, and it kind of lowers the ceiling on some of their other plays. For example, they're not going to get the draw off of Moye, so that's really nice. Also, conveniently turns off this Effect Veiler in their hand, so pretty cool. And again, it makes discard costs way more expensive because it doesn't go to the graveyard, it gets banished instead. Okay, so we do know about the Blackout, and we're gonna have to contend with that and the negation from here. And we can't really use map because of this fellow over here, so let's make it work. We're gonna Advent out that Rabina so that we get our search and an additional search off of the Advent. Let's go ahead and go into Eaglin. And with that Eaglin, we are going to go ahead and grab Ariza. So we're really hoping that our opponent holds the Blackout here, but unfortunately they don't. But we're setting ourselves up to play on our opponent's turn by grabbing back this Advent, depending on what they blow up with their own Blackout. Fortunately, they blew up the one that is significantly more threatening to us, so no complaints there. They're going to get their token because the Blackout was banished. We're going to set Dreaming Town and Advent, and we're pretty good to go for our opponent's turn. So our opponent's going to fire off the Desires that they drew off the top. Very nice. They're going to go into some Tenyi plays to grab back Ataya. And at this point, we are going to attempt to prevent them from Synchro Summoning. Unfortunately, this guy is going to immediately banish our copy of Dreaming Town, but that's why we grabbed Ariza last turn anyway. Unfortunately, though, that does give us a really nice target for that toucan. And we're going to use it. So we're playing under Ash Blossom as best we can here. We're going to go into M-Pen. And we are going to go ahead and go into Eaglin. So we're doing this all in one shot because we don't have maps. So it's a might as well get as much value as we can off this one chain. Well, chain of summons. We're going to leave our D shifter in the graveyard because I kind of want to get it back. And now we are going to use M-Pen as the entirety of the tribute material for Rise of the Mega Monarch. So unfortunately, we are going to have to leave Ryza on the field to really do a lot of productive plays. So our opponent is going to go into Longwan. They do have a rank 10 set up here. The nice thing is if they do go into Barone, we've got enough to really play through Barone. And they would have to put the Barone in defense position, otherwise the negate would be offline and the M-Pen could very easily clear it next turn. They would be able to put it in defense and then pop the M-Pen, but they're not going to end up doing that. So we're going to take the 12, and they are going to attack into the M-Pen. We're going to fire off M-Pen partly to get an additional chain block, but partly to kind of stem a little bit of the damage off. Alright, so we are immediately going to fire off Unexplored Winds, and we're going to tribute off the Rise because we are absolutely going for game this turn. Our opponent's going to effect Veil with the M-Pen, but that is absolutely fine. We have map in our hand to continue going off. We're going to save the Advent in case we have to contend with a second Veiler or anything like that, but our opponent is going to go ahead and surrender at this point. Let's take a look at game 2. Okay, so going into game 2, this is actually one of the more unfortunate hands that you can draw with blind second Floowandereeze. It never feels good when you see some really good board breakers, but absolutely no way to start your combos. This Unexplored Winds is going to have to do a lot of work drawing us something off this M-Pen. So our opponent's going to normal summon Moye, activate the effect. They're going to reveal. We are going to fire off Dimension Shifter at this point because might as well stop them from getting a draw. They are going to discard to summon out the Longwan. Iris Sword Soul, not a big deal, but again, we just like making the discards cost way more than they normally would. They're going to go into Barone, they're going to go into a Xixiao. With the Xixiao, they are going to go ahead and grab a copy of Blackout and pass turn to us. Fortunately for us, they put these both in attack position. So we're going to go ahead and fire off Evenly Match, which is going to, of course, eat the Barone negate. And now we're going to fire off Lightning Storm. We're just going to hit the monsters because we know this back row is offline if they don't have a worm to tribute. So we're going to fire off Unexplored Winds and pray to the avian gods that we find any starter. And what do you know? We drew Infinite Impermanence and Eaglin, who is a 1-card starter at the moment because we have Unexplored Winds. Heart of the cards, baby. Heart of the cards. We're going to go ahead and send that Blackout to summon the M-Pen. And with that M-Pen, we're going to go ahead and grab Dreaming Town, set one, and pass. And again, because Blackout was banished, we gave them a token. They're going to normal summon Moye, get a token, but at this point, we are going to start cleanup duty. Eagle and we are going to grab Apex Avian. Let's get that off the field, because there's not a lot they can do with 2 tokens. And at this point, our opponent will go ahead and surrender.
Alright, so that has been a showcase of 4 different matches showing blind second Floowandereeze in action. If you can't hear it from my voice between editing and recording this outro, I got sick, so just ignore the scraggly voice that I got going on. Again, this was based on the work in progress list that I posted about a month ago, but again, it really has been performing really well, and I thought these matches were a good showcase of kind of averaging out how it performs. There is going to be a part 2 of this that's going to cover Kashtira and possibly a couple other matchups that have come up recently, so keep an eye out for that. Don't forget to drop this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more, and I will catch you all later.